Hi everyone, so in this video I'm going to explain how the process that you're going to be using to copy the one of the subjects that you're going to be assigned for this project to the larger sheet of paper. And you're going to be copying this drawing using your ability to cite angles, measure proportions, and check alignments. So for this demonstration, I'm just going to be copying these two boxes. And before I do this, I am going to need to put my crosshairs on the sheet of paper that I'm going to be making the drawing on. Why do I need the crosshairs? Because it's going to help me locate my basic unit. This is my starting edge, the edge that belongs to the first box I'm going to draw. So let me put those crosshairs on the sheet of paper. My paper measures 24 inches across, so I'm going to put a mark up here at the top at 12, half of 24, and then I'll put another mark at the bottom of the paper, halfway between the left and the right side at 24 inches. I'm going to connect those two lines with my 2B graphite pencil to create my vertical crosshair. Next thing I'm going to do is divide my paper into an equal upper and lower half. Since my paper measures 18 inches this way from top to bottom, I'll put a mark at 9 inches. 9 inches from the top of the paper on both sides. So that's what I'm doing right now. So these are my crosshairs, my vertical and now my horizontal crosshair. So the next thing I am going to need to do is to scale up. I'm going to need to take my basic unit and transfer it from the teeny tiny drawing that you're going to be copying to the larger sheet of drawing paper. The question is how big does that line need to be and where should it go? Obviously, I can't just take the little basic unit, the starting edge, and transfer it to the sheet of drawing paper without changing its size. If I do that, then I will end up with a drawing this big, right, on a much larger sheet of paper. So I want to scale things up. Okay, to do that, I guess first of all, I want to maybe know how long is that edge relative to my format. In other words, how long is this edge compared to, let's say the width of my the width of the left half, let's say, of my my drawing. Okay, so I'm going to take a sheet of paper and I'm going to mark off on the sheet of paper the length of the basic unit for the subject. Okay. And then what I'm going to start to do is maybe compare it to this half of the format, right? The left half of the format, the distance from the bullseye, right here, to the left edge of the format. And my basic unit compared to that distance will fit about 1 times, 2 times, I don't know, 2 and maybe 3/4 times. That's a little messy. Let's try and see if we can get something to fit a little bit more easily. Let's try and take the basic unit and see how many times it will fit into the distance from the horizontal crosshair or the bullseye to the bottom of the format right here. Now it'll fit once. It'll fit about 2 times, all right? So we could say that the basic unit compared to the bottom half of the format, right? The basic unit compared to the distance from the horizontal crosshair to the bottom of the format is a 1:2 ratio, right? This is 1/2 of this. So I want to make my basic unit on the copy, on my drawing paper, 1/2 of this distance, just like it is here, right? So we're going to find 1/2 of this distance. So 1/2 of 9 is what? 4.5, right? I'm going to mark off 4.5 on my sheet of drawing paper. And I know that that then is the height of my basic unit. Now, obviously, the basic unit is not going to lie on the vertical crosshair of my drawing because the basic unit doesn't lie on the vertical crosshair of the original, right? The one that I'm trying to copy. The basic unit lies some distance to the right. Maybe I should darken that vertical crosshair a bit so we can see it a little bit easier. On the original, my basic unit lies some distance to the left of the vertical crosshair. Again, how much is this distance? How far to the left of the vertical crosshair does my basic unit sit? Well, I can maybe look at that distance. You can maybe take another sheet of paper, right, and I can compare the distance between the vertical crosshair on the original to the position of the basic unit, right? It looks like that distance, right, will fit about 2 times from the bullseye to the left edge of the format. In other words, the basic unit is halfway between the bullseye on the original and the left side of the format. In other words, this is right in the middle between the bullseye and the left side of the format. And that's where I want to put the basic unit in my copy, right, on my larger drawing. I want the basic unit to be midway between the bullseye and the left side of my format, just like it is on the original. So now I know really 2 things, right? I know how large the basic unit should be. It's 1/2 of this distance on the original. It's going to be 1/2 that distance on the copy. And the basic unit is midway between here and here. And I want to put the basic unit midway between the bullseye and the left side of the format on the copy. Right? So let's find half the distance between the bullseye and the left side of the format on the copy. Half of 12 is 6. This means we're going to be placing that basic unit midway between here and here. I'm going to draw a light line now using my 6B pencil. To indicate the midway point between the bullseye and the left edge of the format. So I know now how far to the left of the vertical crosshair that basic unit is. I also know how large the basic unit should be, how long it should be, right? It's midway between the horizontal crosshair and the bottom of the format. So I'm using a sheet of paper here, right, to mark off the length of my basic unit. In fact, I'm going to call this the basic unit for the drawing, BUD for short. And so I'm going to mark off the length of the basic unit for the drawing, like so. The bottom of the basic unit goes here. The top of the basic unit obviously begins on the horizontal crosshair. Maybe I should darken that a little bit so that we can see that a little bit more easily. So the basic unit begins on the horizontal crosshair. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to darken the basic unit on my copy so that we can see that a little bit more clearly. Right? So at this point, I've scaled up, right? I know where the basic unit is, and I know how large it should be, okay? In fact, on this little sheet of paper that I'm going to be using to measure things with, I should mark off my basic unit on this other sheet of paper, and I'll label this BUS, right? That's short for basic unit for the subject. This is the subject, this is what I'm drawing. This is the copy, right? Or the drawing that I'm copying, so I'm labeling this as BUD, right? Basic unit for the drawing. Okay. So I've copied this much of the original onto my drawing. So now what I want to do is I want to start measuring some angles, right? The two bottom angles at the bottom of my basic unit for my first cube. So if I hold my picture plane up to the bottom of the basic unit, right, so that the bullseye is resting right at the bottom of the basic unit, I can begin to see a little wedge, right, a little pie shape between my horizontal crosshair and the upward angled edge of the bottom of the right side of my box on the original. In fact, what I can even do here to make that a little bit easier to see, notice I'm holding the viewfinder perfectly vertical. I'm not rocking it this way or this way, right? To make that piece of pie shape a little bit easier to see, I can actually trace its edge onto the viewfinder like so, right? So your horizontal crosshair of your viewfinder, right, can be mimicked, right? It can be duplicated by holding your pencil right here, right? But the minute I take my pencil away from the subject, whether that subject is flat on a sheet of paper like it is for this drawing, or if it's in 3 dimensions like an actual box, the minute I take my pencil away, or the minute I begin to take the horizontal crosshair of my viewfinder away, that piece of pie shape vanishes, or at least the bottom of it does, right? So let's actually draw, right, a line representing where we might hold our pencil to measure that angle, right, in order to see that piece of pie shape. Or let's draw a horizontal line to represent our horizontal crosshair so that we can see that piece of pie shape very, very clearly on the subject. Here's where I'm going to take a ruler, and I'm simply going to add a horizontal crosshair to the drawing, to the original, in order to see that piece of pie shape. And in fact, I'll lengthen it. I'll extend it a little bit over to the other side as well. Okay. So I've got two pie shapes, one to the right of the basic unit and one to the left of the basic unit. One here and one here. Since I'm trying to copy those two pie shapes, one on the right, one on the left, and part of what's allowing me to see those pie shapes is that horizontal crosshair that I added to the subject, I'm going to do the same thing to the drawing. I'm actually going to draw in now. It's almost like I'm moving my horizontal crosshair down here. I'm going to add that crosshair to the bottom of my basic unit. So that all I need to do now, in order to show that piece of pie shape, is to draw in the angle of that bottom edge. Okay, so obviously, if I were to hold the pencil here, that would be a piece of pie shape that would be way bigger than the one that I see here. If I were to hold it down here, that would definitely be in the hors d'oeuvre class of pie or pizza shapes, right? You know, something they'd serve at a fancy party, right? Something like this probably approximates more the angle, right, or the piece of pizza shape that I'm trying to copy from here to here. So here's a little trick. What I find that's really helpful is just to take your ruler and put it where the angle begins, right, where the tip of the piece of pizza is, right? And then adjust the ruler, right, until the top of that pizza shape matches the one that you see in the subject. Okay, so I think I'm going to go about right here. That angle looks pretty good to me. And so I'm going to extend this. Whoops. It slips around a lot, that ruler does. I'm going to extend this all the way to the edge of my drawing. Right? And if you make a little error there, just like I just did, you can take your kneaded eraser and just lighten that mark up. Okay, so we have a couple of little terms that I want to kind of label here. This line here, right, that allows me to see that angle is what we're going to call a crosshair. You're always going to have to draw a crosshair wherever you would need to measure an angle. This is part of showing your work. If you don't include this work, you will lose points in the copy. The other thing that we're going to do is we're going to extend, right, the top edge of that piece of pizza shape, right, the angle of the box all the way to the edge of the paper, like I did here. And there'll be a reason for why we're going to do that that I'll explain later on. Anyway, this edge that we're using to construct the box from is going to be called a construction line. That's another piece of work that you must show when you are making the drawing of the box. All right, let's hop over here to the other side and let's draw in that angle. Okay. Let's draw something like this. All right, so right now that shape right there looks like it matches this one, doesn't it? Let's see. Let's draw that in with a construction line. Pull the ruler away and see how that looks. I don't know. I think maybe that angle might be a little bit smaller than it should be. They look close, but I think this one might be a little bit bigger. Well, if you're like me and you want to get this as correct as you can possibly make it, you can use the viewfinder to help you really measure those angles accurately, whether that angle belongs to a drawn subject like this or it's a three-dimensional subject like the interior of a building. I can take my marker. I can place my bullseye right at the bottom of the basic unit where the tip of that piece of pizza shape that I'm trying to copy begins. I'm going to actually trace, the edge of the subject on the viewfinder. In other words, that's the piece of pizza shape between my horizontal crosshair and the edge that I've just traced. That's the size shape of pizza or pie I want to copy onto my drawing. Let's see how I did. Okay. Whoops. Well, we can see there that I'm pretty close, but it looks like that pizza shape can be just a little bit bigger, right? In other words, I have to angle this edge up a little bit more, okay? All right. And I'm actually going to leave that line there so I know about how much more, right, that piece of pizza shape should increase in size. Just about that much more, not too much more, right? All right, so I'm going to go back with my pencil, and this time I'm going to increase the size of that pizza shape so that it looks like this. Okay. I don't want to confuse these two, so what I can do is I can take my eraser and I can begin to just lighten this up. Now I don't want to completely remove that. I want to leave a little bit of a ghost there. That's proof that you have gone back and taken the initiative to make a correction there. You'll actually get points for that. Okay, let's go up here and draw these angles. One of the things we'll notice, you can see that my horizontal crosshair that completes the pizza shape to the right and the left of the basic unit up top here, it's already supplied, right? It's already there. I don't have to draw that one in like I did down here. Obviously, we can see that the piece of pizza shape up here is smaller than the one down here. How much smaller, right, is the thing that we want to try and get right. Okay. Again, I'm going to hold my ruler up here. Right. I'm going to adjust it until I feel that I've got the angle right, until the angle here matches the angle there. Right. I think that's probably going to be about right. Maybe a little smaller. And once again, I'm going to extend this all the way to the ends of the paper. And I'll explain why I'm extending these edges in just a few moments, just as soon as I get this contour drawn. Okay, there we go. Let's maybe put this over here for the time being. You're familiar with that drawing of the railroad tracks that you probably did when you were in grade school, right? You've got a little dot in the center of the horizon line, and you can draw a road like this that seems to go to infinity. Maybe you even put in like a little, the white line on the road, right? Notice what's happening here. We know on the actual road that these two edges are parallel with one another, but in order for us to make it look like it's going back in space, we have to make sure that the space between the two sides of the road, the left side and the right side, are tapering to that point on the horizon line, right? That's what happens when things or spaces move further away from us. They converge, right? Convergence, right? We would describe convergence as the apparent tapering that occurs between two or more known parallel edges, just like the known parallel edges in the left and the right side of the road. Well, the same thing happens with a box, right? If you can imagine taking that road and turning it on its side, you've got the same sort of situation, right? It's just that in this drawing, we don't get to see where those two lines converge, where they come to a point, like we do in this drawing, right? You would need a bigger sheet of paper for that. But this is what I want you to make sure happens in your drawings. If these edges, right, are moving away from you, as they're moving towards the top of the paper, the space between them should be getting less and less. The edges should be appearing to taper, right? This is called convergence, okay? If these edges are not converging, and I'm going to kind of just label this here, right? This tapering that I can see happening. This is what we call convergence. If these edges are not tapering, something is wrong with these angles. You probably have to go back and measure at least one of them until your edges start to converge as they appear to move away from the box towards the top of the paper. Okay? And it looks like mine do, right? The distance here is greater than this distance over here. So it looks like I'm okay. Right? All right, last angle to measure here at the top of the box. I'm going to go back and I'm going to use my horizontal crosshair that my drawing came with. I'm going to put my ruler on the top of the basic unit, and I'm going to adjust my ruler until this piece of pie shape matches that piece of pie shape. Now, that looks too big. That looks too small. So these contours would certainly be tapering if I drew that line in right now. Only problem is they're probably tapering too quickly. This piece of pizza shape is definitely too big, too small actually compared to this one. So I'm going to adjust my angle here a little bit more. I think I think right about there looks okay. Whoops. The doggone ruler moved on me again. Okay, and let's extend this to the edges of our paper. And again, sorry to be nasty about this, but I will take points off if you do not extend those edges to the ends of the paper to check for convergence, okay? So does it look like they're converging? Heck yes. If I want to check the accuracy of that angle, once again, before I go any further, there's nothing that prevents me from taking my viewfinder, putting my bullseye up to where that piece of pizza shape begins, tracing the edge right on the viewfinder, like so, coming back to my drawing and seeing how the two compare, right? Pretty good, huh? Okay, so still doesn't look like a box yet, but I know what the basic unit is. I've scaled it up. I have used my crosshairs to measure the angles at the top and the bottom of at the top and the bottom of the basic unit on both sides. They taper, right? I've checked the angles. Those look pretty good. The only thing I need to do now is figure out how wide the right side and the left side of the box are. Now, another way of saying that is how much space separates my basic unit and the right vertical edge of the box. How much space is there in here? Well, this is where we start to measure proportions. Ooh, scary stuff, right? Okay. So, again, I'm trying to measure the relationships on my subject so that I can then duplicate those same things in my drawing, right? So I'm going to use my basic unit for the subject, right? I'm going to measure things using that basic unit. Really, all other things, all other proportions in the drawing, all other distances between things can be compared to that basic unit. This is why some artists refer to that starting contour as the seed for the drawing. Everything else is tied to it. Okay. I mean, what I can do, if I were actually out there in the field measuring an actual 3D box, I might hold my pencil at the end of my outstretched arm, mark the basic unit off on it like so, and then take that basic unit, turn it sideways, and then ask myself, well, how many of these basic units compare to the width of the box? Well, I can see that roughly 1/2 of a basic unit will fit into this space. In other words, the width of this side of the box is 1/2 of a basic unit. But to make things a little bit easier for us, and this is I guess the nice thing about making a copy from a flat sheet of paper, is we can use the basic unit for the subject, our bus, on the sheet of paper to do some, well, more precise measurement, right? I am going to turn the bus, right, the basic unit for the subject that I've marked off here on my paper, into a little measuring stick. So to do that, I'm going to take my sheet of paper and I'm going to fold it in half like this, okay? So 1/2 of a basic unit for the subject is that much, right? 1/2. And I can actually label that 1/2, okay? Can actually mark that, right, on my subject, 1/2. And if I take that 1/2, and if I divide that 1/2 again, what do I come up with? 1/4, right? And I can mark that off on my bus, my basic unit for the subject. And if I take 1/4, and if I add it to that 1/2 of a basic unit, I now know what 3/4 of a basic unit is. So let's measure this distance now, right? We thought it looked like about 1/2 of a basic unit. But let's really kind of confirm that, right? Let's take the basic unit for the subject and compare it to the width of the box. Oh, it's not 1/2, is it? It's a little bit more. Well, let's add another 1/4 of a basic unit there. I was wrong. It's actually 3/4 of a basic unit. So we have to make the box in our copy 3/4 of a basic unit wide, just like it is in the original. Well, can I use this basic unit for the subject to do the measuring in my drawing? I don't know. Looks too small. We have to do the same thing for this basic unit that we did for this basic unit. We have to divide this basic unit up into halves and quarters, just like we did for this one, because this is the basic unit that we're going to be using to repeat those measurements with, all right? In other words, we could say that the ratio between this basic unit and the width of the box is a 1, right? Your basic unit is always your 1, right? Is a 1 to 3/4 ratio. 1 to 3/4. I'm going to repeat that same relationship, that same ratio in the drawing, right? So I take my basic unit for the drawing and I divide it into a half of a basic unit. And I'll mark it off on my drawing. In fact, if you really want to impress me, you'll actually label those divisions on your basic unit, like I've labeled this 1/2. What I absolutely want to see is I absolutely want to see these little hash marks on your basic unit. That's proof to me that you are actually using this basic unit to measure your proportions, right? So I'm going to take that half basic unit now, and I'm going to divide it in half. And we know that a half of a half gives us 1/4, right? And I'll mark that off on the basic unit for my drawing on my bud, right? And since we know that the ratio of this to this is 1 to 3/4, right? We have to add another 1/4 to this. We've got 1/4, 1/2, another 1/4 plus that half brings us to 3/4. And once again, I'll darken the hash mark on my basic unit. Right. So I've got the same scale here that I have here, only larger, because this is a larger drawing, right? So the ratio that I want between the basic unit and the width of the right side of the box is 1 to 3/4. So I'm going to take my basic unit for the drawing, and I'm going to mark off on it. Oops. Let's transfer that 3/4 basic unit to our sheet of paper, right? 3/4. That's how wide I'm going to make this box. 3/4 of a basic unit. And I'll probably mark it up here as well, just so that I can keep both, just so I can draw this right edge of the box parallel to my basic unit, right? And I connect those two. And I've got another construction line, right? So no matter what type of construction line it is, whether it's a horizontal one describing the top and the bottom edges of the box, or if it is a vertical one, I'm always sending those construction lines off the edge of the paper, okay? So let's go over here and figure out what this is, right? Again, I'm not going to assume that this side is the same width as this side, even though the box looks like it's a square. I'll take my basic unit for the subject, and I'll use it to measure this side. Now that's a half, okay, right? So the ratio of the basic unit to the left side of the box is now a 1 to 1/2 ratio, right? This distance is 1/2 of the basic unit in the subject, and I want the same relationship in the drawing. I want the width of the left side of the box in the drawing to also be 1/2 of my basic unit. So I take the basic unit for the drawing. I've marked off 1/2 of basic unit onto, and I will make a mark here, write 1/2 of a basic unit to the left of my basic unit, and another mark down here, 1/2 of a basic unit to the left of my basic unit. All right. In other words, I'm putting 2 marks down, one here and then somewhere down here, because so many times I've just used 1 mark and I've drawn in what I thought was a parallel line, and I ended up with something. I drew in what I thought was a vertical line, and I ended up with something like that, right? So I want to keep this left edge parallel to this edge. Parallel means that the space between here and here doesn't change. It's always 1/2 of a basic unit, always 1/2 of a basic unit. Okay, so next I'm going to draw in this construction line. And it's starting to look kind of like a box at this point, after all of this drawing, huh? Okay, so what do we need to do next? Well, it looks like we need a couple of angles, one up here and one up here. And remember, I'd said that whenever you are measuring, whenever you're attempting to draw the angle of a contour, you need the crosshairs. Why do I need the crosshairs here and here on my drawing? And it would also be helpful to add them to the subject, because that's what allows me to see the piece of pizza shape. Okay, let's add those right now. I'm going to add a crosshair here because I'm going to be using it to measure this angle. And I'm going to need a crosshair here to measure this angle. When I draw those crosshairs in, I can see the little pieces of pizza shapes. All right. So I know where this corner is, right? On my drawing. It's at the intersection of this edge and this edge. So that's where I'm going to begin. That's where the tip of the pizza is that I want to create. Okay. This corner right here is represented in the drawing right there. So now I need to add my horizontal crosshair here. This is what is called showing your work. In other words, I want you to prove to me how you arrived at the shape of that pizza shape, right? Draw the bottom of the pizza shape in there. All right, so I'm going to put my ruler on that corner where that tip of that pizza shape begins. I'm going to adjust the angle or the tilt of the ruler until I feel that I've got the angle just about right. Okay, what do you think? Does this match that? Looks like it does. I'm going to go with it. Let's draw that in. If I can hold my ruler steady. All right, so right off the bat, what I'm looking at is whether or not these two edges are converging. Is this space bigger than this space? It certainly is. So it looks like I'm barking up the right tree there. Maybe just to kind of confirm the accuracy of that, I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to plot my viewfinder on there and just measure that angle this way. And again, you can do this with any subject. It doesn't have to be a drawing. It can be a real live thing, a person in the interior of a room, a box. And look at that. It matches pretty good. I've got some practice with this, you can tell, right? Okay, so there we go. Got that angle. Let's finish this doggone box up by drawing this edge here. And this is definitely a very small sliver of pizza. You wouldn't want to eat that, just that for dinner. You go to bed hungry, right? Okay, so let's draw in this horizontal crosshair. Again, I'm showing my work here, right? I'm adding that horizontal crosshair so that I can more easily compare the piece of pizza shape that I'm thinking about drawing here to the one that I'm trying to copy on the subject. So to start that copying process, or to complete it rather, I'm going to put my ruler on the subject. I'm going to adjust it until I feel I've gotten that just about right. That looks about right. And I'm going to draw that piece of pizza shape in. Okay, so my copy, or my subject is in the way, so I'm going to move that over here. Probably put it on my desk for the time being, so I can extend this edge, this construction line, all the way to the edges of the paper. Again, why do I want to do that? Why? Yeah, that's right, for convergence. These contours converge as well, okay? So, you kind of see I got something that looks like a box here. And it looks like it's in the right place, and it looks like it's relatively the same size on this sheet of paper as it is on this one, or proportionally so, right? Obviously this box is bigger, this one's smaller, but proportionally this box is, has the same relationship to the sheet of paper as this does to the smaller sheet of paper. So to make this pop out now, to distinguish my construction lines that are going every which way at this point, and the box from one another, I'm going to use a heavier line weight. So I might switch over to a 6B or a 4B pencil now to darken these lines and turn them into what we're going to call physical edges. These represent the actual edges of the box. So I'm going to use a heavier line weight here. I'm going to make these things darker so that anyone who looks at the drawing will never confuse all of those construction lines from the actual box that I have constructed out of them. Okay. Yeah, so that should hopefully make that box really stand out. And I might even darken these inner contours a little bit. Okay, again, I'm using my, actually this is a 6B pencil. This is even a little bit darker, a little bit softer, right? So there's my first completed box. So the next thing, so we've talked so far about using crosshairs to measure angles. We've talked about using the basic unit to first measure proportions on the subject, and then the basic unit on the drawing to repeat those proportions on the drawing. So the next thing we have to do is we have to draw this box, right? And again, I can't just put this box number 2, let's call it. This is our number 1 box, our basic unit box. I can't just put that anywhere, right? Just like you can't put someone's shoulder wherever you feel like it if you want it to look like a believable drawing of a human figure. This distance then becomes important, right? The thing is where in the world do I start drawing that box? How do I figure this out? Well, relationships is all about using 3 perceptual skills, right? Angles, proportions, and what's the third one? Alignments. Here's another reason why I wanted you to extend those edges, right? If we were to take this edge of the basic unit box, and if we were to just do something like lay our pencil, or maybe those edges are really far apart in a landscape drawing, if I were to imagine that my ruler or my pencil was sliding around on my viewfinder like the hour hand in a clock, there's nothing that prevents me from rotating that pencil however I want, right? And resting it on the subject like so. Well, look at what happens when I do that. Do you see how this pencil contains the bottom edge of my first box? This edge right here. And then if I follow it along, it also runs right into the bottom left corner of box 2. So I know, don't I, that somewhere along this construction line, the bottom corner of box number 2 is going to be located on the drawing. Let me just take that edge and let's extend it on the subject like we were doing on the drawing. That, folks, is an alignment. The bottom right edge of the basic unit box, box number 1, is aligned with the bottom left corner of box 2. Okay, great. Next thing we might want to know is how far away is this corner from this box? Well, we could measure that distance, couldn't we? We could take our basic unit for the subject, and we could actually measure the distance between these two boxes. We could actually measure the distance between the right edge of the basic unit box and the left edge of box number 2, right? The left edge that contains this bottom corner of box 2. Well, let's see. What is that distance? Well, it's definitely 1 basic unit, right? It's definitely 1 basic unit, plus it looks like about another half of a basic unit. So the ratio between these two edges is what? It's 1. Remember, our basic unit is always the 1. It's 1 to 1.5. Or if you prefer, 1.5 for those of you who like decimals. Okay? So I want to repeat that same relationship now in the drawing, of course. So I take the basic unit for the drawing, the bud, right? And I make the distance between the right edge of my basic unit box and the left edge of box number 2, right? You can't see it yet because we haven't drawn it, but I want to put that much space, 1 and 1/2 basic units between them, right? So I'll mark off 1 basic unit of space between those two boxes. I will add another half of a basic unit. And I know for certain now, right? Let's move this over here. I know for certain now that this is the correct amount of space between those two boxes, right? Let's draw that vertical in. Again, this vertical is going to represent the left side of box number 2. Again, notice I'm extending it all the way off the paper, right? So look at what's happening here now. The intersection of this extended bottom edge of box number 1 and the intersection of this vertical, right, whose distance we already figured out, right, the left edge of box 2. The intersection of those 2 points, the left edge of box 2, and this alignment gives us the bottom left corner of box 2, right? So what could we do next? Well, we could measure the height of this, but I'm curious about something. I wonder if the bottom or the top of this box might also be aligned with the top of this box, right? Since checking alignments is probably easier than measuring proportions, right? It's not gonna, I would prefer to actually check this alignment first. Hey, look at that. It looks like that edge of box 2 and this edge of box 1 are aligned, right? Again, if I were to actually take my pencil and extend this edge with a line, right? That's an alignment. Notice what I've already got. I've already got that line on my paper. That's one of the reasons why I said extend those edges with construction lines before you turn them into physical edges, right? The top left corner of box 2 is found at the intersection of the left edge, right, and the extended top edge, top right edge of box 1. Right there. Look at that. I actually don't have to measure that due to these 2 alignments. I'm just going to turn this into a physical edge right now. So alignments, if you're picking up what I'm laying down here, are going to allow you to draw things more accurately and more quickly, right? If you just take some time to check them. You don't have to measure a lot of stuff if you're willing to check alignments. Okay. Let's move forward here. How about we now measure the angle of this edge and this edge, right? The bottom and the top edge of box 2 on the left side, all right? Now to do that, what are we going to need to do? We're going to need some crosshairs, right? In fact, let's put them on the actual subject, right? I could hold my pencil up here like this, and I can see that piece of pizza shape, no problem, right? The minute I take my pencil away, pizza shape is gone. Or I could take my viewfinder, right? And I could hold that viewfinder up there, put my bullseye right on the beginning of the bottom edge of box 2, and I can see that pizza shape is clear as day now. But the minute I take that crosshair away, the horizontal crosshair away, it vanishes. So let's actually add it to the subject. Yeah, let's draw that thing in here. Right, there's the pizza shape I want to copy here. And here's the pizza shape that I want to copy onto my big drawing from my subject. There's that top one right here. 2 pieces of pizza shapes, right? One here, one here. All right, since I want you to show your work when you're doing this, let's draw in a horizontal crosshair here as well. Excuse me if I'm getting in your way here. I won't be there for long. Maybe I should switch over actually to my 2B pencil here, because it does make it easier to draw lighter line weights. Okay, and let's add another crosshair up here. In other words, I'm being a good boy by showing all of my work, right? Okay, so let's do this first pizza shape. Again, I'm going to put my ruler on the tip of the piece of pizza at the top left back corner of the box. And I'll angle my ruler down from my horizontal crosshair until I feel I have gotten the correct angle. Oops, I should get that out of the way, right? I can compare the two. I can't see the thing I'm trying to copy, huh? All right. Okay, does this piece of pizza shape match that one? I think so. Let's go ahead and draw that in. All right, so once again, I want to extend this all the way. Get this out of the way. I want to extend this edge all the way off the paper. Again, why? Because who knows, there might be another alignment here that this will help me see, but I also want to check for convergence. All right, bottom angle on the left side. Let's go back here. Got my horizontal crosshair here. That one is on my subject as well, right? The only thing missing is the bottom of the piece of pizza on my drawing. Again, I'm going to put my pencil here where I want that piece of pizza shape, the tip of the pizza to begin. I'm going to adjust the angle of the tilt of my ruler until this pizza shape here matches the one on the subject. I think that looks about right. Let's draw that in now. Okay, again, I'm going to temporarily remove this so I can extend these edges behind the box to see whether or not they're actually converging. And if they are, I should be good to go. Yeah, good, they are, okay? That's why these angles have to be different. If they were exactly the same, they would never converge. It would never look right, okay? So, I've got the two angles, right, top and bottom, on the left side of the box drawn in. What should we do next? Well, there are a number of different things we could do, right? We could draw this angle up here, right? Or we could maybe decide how far apart this back edge and this front edge are. Maybe let's do that, okay? So once again, I'm going to measure this. I'm going to use the basic unit. I'm going to use the basic unit for the subject. Right? It's my one. It's what I'm measuring everything with. I'm going to take that and I'm going to measure this distance on the subject, the distance between the back edge and the front corner of box 2. Right? Uh-oh, look at that. Well, it's definitely one basic unit, that's for sure, right? Definitely one basic unit, but it's definitely less than another quarter. So what the heck is that? Well, it kind of looks to me, like this might be, can you see that, everyone? It kind of looks like this might be 1/2 of a quarter, right? 1/2 of a quarter, right? It's not a full quarter more. It looks like it's 1/2 of a quarter more. What's 1/2 of a quarter? It's an 1/8. That's a nasty thing of me to do to you, isn't it, right? Let's just see how that works. So let's maybe take, let's see here. Let's maybe take that quarter. All right, let's divide. Yeah, that looks like 1/2 of a quarter. That looks like an 1/8 there. All right. I'm going to take that quarter and I'm actually going to divide that quarter now in half on the basic unit for the subject. That's a little crazy, isn't it? Anyway, it's 1/8. It's one basic unit plus 1/2 of a quarter, or 1/8, right? That's a 1 to 1 and 1/8 ratio. Okay, so, all right, I guess that's what it is. So I'm going to take my basic unit for the drawing, and I'm going to divide that quarter in half. There it is. This is now 1/8 of a basic unit. I'm going to add that hash mark to the basic unit on the drawing and actually label it. Why? Because I want to show the work, right? Okay, so if the ratio of the basic unit to this width on the subject is a 1 to 1 and 1/8 ratio, I'm going to repeat that same relationship now in the drawing. I'm going to take that basic unit and slide it over here. I'll mark off 1 basic unit and then add another 1/8 of a basic unit to that, so that now I have the same 1 to 1 and 1/8 ratio here that I observed here. Okay. All right. I now know where the outside corner, right, of that box is. Let's draw that in with a vertical. Again, this is a construction line, so I'm keeping it relatively light, but I can start to see, right, the left side of the box. All right. So at this point, what can we do? We can recycle this horizontal crosshair. We can use it again to measure the upward tilting contour of the very back of box 2. I think we'll, oh wait, we don't have to do that, do we? No, we've already drawn that in because that's a line. Okay, that saves us some work, right? Maybe let's have a little celebration here and go in and just darken the physical edges of the left side of box number 2, right? That drawn in. So what do we need to do now? Let's go ahead and measure these angles. Okay. Again, I want to create the piece of pizza shape. If I have the ruler up there, I can see it plain as day. The minute I take the ruler away, I can't see it at all. If I can't see it, I can't copy it, right? So let's add a crosshair to the subject here. Let's add a crosshair to the subject here. That's the piece of pizza shape I want to copy down here. Can I see the pizza shape here? Absolutely not. I can't see the bottom edge of it. I can't see the top edge of it. Let's draw in the horizontal crosshair. Let's show our work there. There's my horizontal crosshair. Again, I'm going to put my pencil where the tip of that piece of pizza begins on the drawing. Right. I'm going to adjust the angle of my ruler until I get that piece of pizza angle so that it matches this one. Do they match? Does that one match that one? I think so. Draw that in. I'll even extend the edge forward this way. Okay, let's do this one up here. Okay, let's add the horizontal crosshair to measure that angle. Where is that? What's about right here? Lots of lines. I'm starting to get a little confused here, right? There's my horizontal crosshair here. I want to now duplicate this pizza shape here. Again, I'm going to put my pencil on that corner where the tip of that pizza shape begins. I'm going to draw in that angle. And I'm going to actually extend it this way. Why am I extending it this way, you might ask? Well, if I know that the edges are supposed to converge here, right, but I can't really, they're not long enough for me to see them converging, the opposite would be true for these edges that start to move in front of the box, right? Let me do it here. I can't, there's not enough paper for me to really see if they're converging, right, behind the box, right, in this direction. But the opposite will happen if I extend those edges in front of the box. In other words, towards the bottom of the paper. These are diverging now, okay? They should be diverging in my drawing. And they are, right? The distance between here and here is greater than it was here. So those angles look like they're pretty good. Okay. Whew. Let's figure out what this edge, what the space between the outside corner of this box and the left or the right edge of box number 2 is. Again, we're going to take our basic unit for the subject and we're going to measure that. It's very tempting to eyeball this, I know, but that's not the point of this assignment. The assignment is to measure everything. Uh-oh. Okay. So box number 2 is clearly giving us trouble. It's really making us work pretty hard here. If we can kind of look at this, we can see that it's not an eighth, it's not a quarter, it's not a half. What the heck is that? Huh. Well, I got a crazy idea. Let's take this strip of paper that we've marked the basic unit for the subject off on, and what the heck? Let's just mark this distance off on box number, on the subject, and let's come on over here and compare it to the basic unit. I mean, let's see how many times this distance, this width, if you will fit into the basic unit. Well, it looks like it will fit once, twice, look at that, about 3 times. Yeah, so it looks like this, if this distance will fit into the basic unit 1, 2, 3 times, this looks like a third. Look at that. That is 1/3 of the basic unit. Okay, great. Where does that leave us here? Well, it looks like, you guys, we've got to figure out what 1/3 of a basic unit looks like on the drawing. Okay. So this is where we're going to have to do maybe a little bit of trial and error here. I'm going to put a mark here that I think looks similar to that one, and I'm going to see if I put a mark here, is this 1/3 of this? In other words, will this, if this fits 1, 2, 3 times into this distance, this mark is 1/3 of the basic unit. Let's see how I did. 1, 2, or definitely will not fit 3 times. I overshot this. This has to be brought down a little bit, right? Right, so let's take an eraser, if I can find one. I think I dropped my eraser. Here it is. Let's get this out of the way. This is way too much. Let's bring this down a little bit, maybe about right here. And I'm going to make this division longer just so I don't confuse it with the shorter hash marks on my basic unit. I'm going to even erase this. And see if this is now 1/3 of this. It will be, or if I can fit it 1 times, 2 times, 3 times, hey, it is. If I can fit this into this 3 times, this must be 1/3 of the basic unit, right? Again, why does that make us happy? Because that's exactly the width, right, of the right side of box 2. It's 1/3 of a basic unit wide. Here's 1/3 of a basic unit, right? I'm using my basic unit for the drawing. I've marked off 1/3 here on the back. And that's how wide this box is. I'm going to mark it off down here too, just so that I can keep that left or that right side of the box parallel to this outside or this inside corner. And let's take our 2B pencil and draw in that construction line. Okay, move this over here now, get it out of the way. Let's, I guess, celebrate our completion of the right side of box number 2 by darkening those edges with construction lines, just so we don't confuse them. We don't confuse these physical edges with those construction lines. Okay. All right, it's almost looking like box 2. What do we need to do yet? Looks like we need a couple more angles, don't we? No, actually we just need to measure this one, right? If we draw this edge in, this edge will end up intersecting with this edge. Remember, this edge and this edge were aligned. We found the position of this edge by confirming that it was aligned with this edge of box number 1. We drew that on our drawing. We already know where the back edge of box number 2 is. We just have to draw this angle in. All right, what do we need to do when we're drawing an angle? Right, we need to draw a crosshair, right? All right, so I'm going to actually just add this crosshair here. This comes very, very close to the horizontal crosshair that I began this drawing with in the very, very beginning. I'm still going to add that crosshair there though, right there. I'm going to do the same thing now on the drawing. Right? I probably should switch over to my 2B pencil. I just finished drawing the physical edges with that 6B. That gets a little too dark. I'll use the 2B to draw that crosshair in. That's where the tip of that pizza is. That's where the tip of that angle is. Right. I want to copy this angle now, beginning right here on my drawing. All right, we'll put that pencil down. We will adjust the angle of the ruler until this piece of pizza shape matches this piece of pizza shape. All right, here we go. We're getting there. I think that looks, oops. That looks about right. Maybe just down a little bit more like that. How's that? Yeah. Whoops. I need somebody to hold this for me. All right, so let's draw in this edge now. And again, I'm going to extend that edge. Let's get the subject out of the way here. I'm going to extend that edge just to confirm. I hope these edges converge. If they don't, that means I need to probably go back and redraw the angle. All right, they're converging slowly, but they are converging, right? This distance here, right? This distance here is definitely less than this distance. Not by much, but it is less, okay? So I finished the top of box number 2. I can kind of commemorate that by darkening these construction lines, turning them into physical edges, and that completes box number 2, right? So really, you know, to start drawing box number 3, and I'm not going to complete box 3 because completing box 3 would just be more of what I've already explained. I think the toughest part when you're drawing that other box is simply deciding where to begin it. So, for example, I probably wouldn't pick an edge like this, right? I might pick something like the intersection of the bottom edge of box 3 with the back left side of box 2. In other words, I would look at how far above this corner, right, that back bottom corner of box 2, the intersection of the bottom of box 3 is. How much is this, right? That's pretty easy to measure, I think, I hope. Again, I'll go back to the basic unit for the subject. I'll slide it over here. All right, so it's not an 1/8, it's not a 1/4, it's not a 1/2. Fingers crossed. Maybe it's a 1/3, right? Remember the 1/3? Aha, look at that. It's a 1/3. It's a 1/3 of a basic unit. So I want to repeat that same relationship in the drawing, right? You getting the hang of this? I'm going to repeat that same relationship in the drawing. I'm going to use my basic unit for the drawing. I'm going to, this is all, you know, I've got to go to the side where I marked off the 1/3. I'm going to measure up I'm going to measure up 1/3 of a basic unit. That's the point at which I would start drawing, right? The front bottom edge of box 3, right? And notice this. If I were to draw a horizontal crosshair there, right, where the bottom of box 3 meets the back left side of box 2, there's absolutely no angle. There's absolutely no angle. It's a 0 angle. There's no piece of pizza there, right? What would I need to do next? I need to figure out what the length of this is. But I'm not going to do that because I'm sure you can figure that out for yourself, right? It would just be more of what I've already described, okay? So, really important here, right? To show all of your work. You want to draw construction lines, right? Wherever you're wherever you're building a box. You want to extend those construction lines all the way to the edges of the paper. To do what? To check for alignments and to also check for convergence. You want to show all of your work. You want to include all of your hash marks on the basic unit for your first box. That is what you are measuring all other relationships, widths and spaces with. If I don't see that, I will take points off. All right? You're going to use heavier line weights, and I haven't labeled this yet, right? I should. Shame on me. You're going to use heavier line weights, darker, thicker lines to describe the physical edges of your boxes so that they are distinct and clearly readable from all of your construction lines, okay? Again, you will include crosshairs wherever you are measuring any of the angles of your drawing. 9 times out of 10, if I don't see crosshairs there, people goof the angles up, and you don't want to be one of those folks, right? Okay? So this is the process that you're going to be using for the next project, the sighted box drawing.